Hey everyone, it's Riggs here, back again with some more entertainment news from 2023. And here we have from looper.com, we've got the staff predictions for the biggest disappointments of 2023. What could they be? Well, here we have Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, so I got to figure that's going to be one of them down here. This is again by the Looper staff, links in the description. Let's get into it. Let's set the scene. This huge movie you've been waiting to watch for ages is just about to come out. You went on Fandango and you picked your seats, smack in the middle, obviously, because you're not going to be using the bathroom during this experience, unless it's one of the Avatar sequels, probably. And you arrive at the theater, starry-eyed, optimistic. You get your jumbo popcorn and smother it in salt and something butter-like, because eating healthy is overrated. You fill up your large Coke. Bathroom needs be damned. You take your seat. You watch Nicole Kidman tell you that heartbreak feels good at a place like this. And when the movie starts, you realize Nicole Kidman is a liar. The movie was terrible. It broke your heart. It did not feel good, despite the physical place you're in. An AMC if you were lucky enough to observe award-winner Nicole Kidman attend the movies in a very sparkly suit. You left dejected, disappointed, and demoralized. This is just an example, though. Take Nicole Kidman out of the equation and imagine spending 8 hours on a series that turns out to be a dud. Don't let this happen to you, my friend. Looper's experts have used their clairvoyant powers to come up with picks for the movies and TV shows to avoid in 2023. Caitlin Albers' first pick, The Marvels. I think I agree with this one without even reading the description here. I suppose something can't be a disappointment if you're expecting it to be terrible. Either way, The Marvels is going to be the biggest letdown of 2023. I will admit I'm not fond of Brie Larson. Who is? So the movie already has one strike against it. One thing we have to look forward to, I guess, is these YouTube channels. This one hopefully won't be included, but I can't rule out the possibility, churning out video after video after video of Brie Larson content. God help us all. Moviegoers really showed up for Captain Marvel, making it one of the 10 films of the MCU to cross the $1 billion mark. But that doesn't mean they loved it. No, I think it was pretty much universally meh. I didn't care for it. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't as bad as a lot of the pop culture influencers would have us think, but it wasn't anything to write home about. And it did have one thing working for it. They lied to us. They convinced us that we needed to see this movie to get what was going to be going on in Avengers Endgame. And that turned out to not be the case. The 2019 film was one of the most hated films from Marvel Studios. And you can blame it on an unjustified hate campaign targeting Larson or the fact that the movie just sucked. Hint, it's the latter. Finally, someone honest about this. For all these years, we've been hearing about this misogynistic hate campaign against Brie Larson, the innocent, sweet Brie Larson. Well, the movie was just not that good. The Marvels will bring Kamala Khan to the big screen, along with WandaVision standout Monica Rambeau. This movie is just going to be one big nothing burger, and it has so much working against it. It certainly will not cross $1 billion at the box office and will likely be one of the biggest flops of the year. Captain Marvel was just too bad to have an incredible sequel. Yes, there's a new director aboard, but even if it's not as bad as the first, I just don't think anyone really cares about Captain Marvel at this point. That's the biggest problem with the MCU at the moment. Exactly. Captain Marvel, first movie, everyone was in overdrive hype mode for the Avengers movies. Phase 4 of the MCU has had a few missteps, and we don't have, as they're saying here, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers to kind of hold down the fort. The Marvels won't be the film that brings everyone together and has crowds cheering for Carol Danvers. It will be the film that cements Marvel fatigue is the big trend of 2023. And I think it was the big trend of 2022 that's maybe going underreported right now. Nina Starner, Super Mario Brothers. I am going to have to disagree with this one. I think it looks terrific. But let's get into it. Charlie Day, my good sir, my nightman cometh, penning king. Who blackmailed you into doing this movie? Just kidding. I get it. It's money. It's like a truckload of Nintendo money, a potential boatload, maybe even a yacht. I'm told you can buy things with money. If it keeps Always Sunny afloat longer, it's fine. Let me tell you, watching that trailer, the most recent one that came out, that was the most jarring thing about it to me was Charlie Day. I don't really care that Chris Pratt doesn't sound like the stereotypical Super Mario that we all hear in the video games and commercials and wherever Mario's got a voice, and it's a me, Mario. That's not what we got from Chris Pratt. There's a little bit of a Italian plumber accent going on there, I guess, but not what people were expecting. But Charlie Day as Luigi, it just sounds like Charlie Day. It took me completely out of the whole thing. I don't know that the new Super Mario Brothers film will truly disappoint anyone, because I honestly can't imagine that anyone is excited about it in the first place. Well, I'm not excited about it, but I think it's going to be fine for my kids to watch. In an age where original movies are frequently passed over for soulless cash grabs based on existing intellectual property, we're all pretty cynical. At least I am. I'll speak for myself here. That said, this cast, aside from Chris Pratt, who has worked overtime to become the worst of the Chris's, deserves better. Anna Taylor-Joy, what are you doing? Keegan-Michael Kay, is he? I didn't even know he was in this. I know your best bud won an Oscar, but you don't have to be here. Jack Black, Seth Rogen, I like you both, and you shouldn't do this. I think Jack Black sounded terrific in the trailer, and that was one of the things that most people that I saw comment on it were so jazzed about, was that he was doing something different. Fred Armisen, this makes sense. Honestly, you belong here. Go off, weirdo. Again, this movie might not disappoint anyone outright. I'm just disappointed that it exists. Remember the Emoji Movie, you guys? The movie that made Jordan Peele quit acting and maybe indirectly led to Keegan-Michael Key doing this one? This feels like the second coming of an Emoji Movie, in that nobody expects it to be any good, but it cost the studio a fortune regardless. I don't think this is a fair comparison at all. And not for nothing, my kids like the Emoji Movie. They wanted to watch it multiple times. So we didn't go see it in the theater. We mercifully saw it on Redbox rental or whatever, or maybe even got it from the library or something. But let's please not put the most recognizable video game characters and franchises in the history of video games on the same level as what was clearly a cash grab Emoji Movie. Anyway, we already have a Super Mario Brothers movie, and there are at least 6 people at Looper HQ ready to defend that one at literally any second. Go watch that one instead. Those 6 people at Looper HQ are on drugs. Paulie Poizuo, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. On paper, there's a lot to like about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Everyone's favorite adventure archaeologist was inviting quips about belonging in a museum himself when Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull dropped in 2008. So bringing him back in 2023, bold. So is the choice to coolly replace Shia LaBeouf's ill-received Mutt Williams with Indy's goddaughter, Helena, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Clearly, this is a movie that revels in audacity. A new indie film might work well if the character takes a senior expert role, Henry Jones Sr. style. Letting younger characters do the jumping and fighting would make sense and close the circle for Indiana as he mentors the next generation. But this won't go like that, will it? This will clearly be a last hurrah type of deal where an 80-year-old Harrison Ford still fights Nazis like it's nothing. Sure, the trailer teases that Indy feels too old for adventuring, but don't be fooled. Moments later, he's riding horses, running on top of trains, and jumping from moving tuk-tuks in feats of athleticism that would have been impressive in Raiders of the Lost Ark era, let alone his Twilight years. We see a variation of the classic shoot the swordsman moment from Raiders and get a tease of yet another giant henchman fight. Don't be surprised if Indy has to solve an icky environmental puzzle during his hunt for the MacGuffin. What is this website? Are we taking the piss out of social justice warriors here? The movie's apparent antagonist, Mads Mikkelsen's Voller, even looks like Raiders of the Lost Ark's villain Tote. I think that's just a coincidence. I'd enjoy a good final Indiana Jones movie, and I'd love it if the trailer turns out to be a huge misdirect that hides a much more imaginative and inventive movie than the one it teases. It's just that right now, the Dial of Destiny seems like a microwave plate of lukewarm leftovers that's content to ride the coattails of past glories. This seems like a recipe for disaster, regardless of how much they de-age Ford for the wildest action scenes. Hopefully, history will prove me wrong. Well, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm not going to be fooled this time. I will probably see this in the theaters opening weekend, but I am definitely not going into it expecting anything great. So I can only be surprised. With Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I was so excited to see Indiana Jones back in action that I was completely let down. It's the same thing that happened with Phantom Menace from Star Wars, where after all those years, finally went in to see the movie, and I went to see it 4 times trying to convince myself that it was any good, and ultimately decided that it was not. Kieran Fisher, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Who the hell is looking forward to this anything other than an ironic way? I've watched micro-budget horror movies long enough to know a turkey when I see one, and Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is already off to a bad start. While the concept of turning a beloved children's character into a bloodthirsty homicidal maniac is admittedly brilliant, history has shown that these type of gimmick movies rarely succeed. Yes, I'm looking at you, Pinocchio's Revenge and the Curse of Humpty Dumpty. Wow, I mean, this has a lot to do with the fact that these things are now in the public domain, correct? While I go into Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey with an open mind, it's already clear that the movie is one big missed opportunity. For a start, Winnie and Piglet look like dudes in cheap masks as opposed to the anthropomorphic animals from the 100-Acre Wood. What makes this movie different from any horror movie about masked killers? I understand this is a low-budget affair, and authentic costumes cost money, and would also result in them getting sued, because I just think the concept of Winnie the Pooh is in the public domain. Certainly the Disney characters that this author is probably referring to are definitely not in the public domain. You've got the original A.A. Milne drawings that are probably also in the public domain with the original story, but that's about it. But the film doesn't even seem interested in making us suspend our disbelief at all. Why not use puppets for the homicidal non-human characters instead? In an ideal world, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey would be an animated movie in the style of Woodland Christmas Critters episode of South Park. The caper depicts adorable talking animals as flesh-eating miscreants who want to usher in a new age of the Antichrist. It taps the innocence of childhood before unleashing a twisted tale of terror that's disturbing and hilarious. Sadly, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey looks neither funny nor disturbing, but maybe it'll deliver some decent gore and carnage. Someday, a filmmaker will come along and make a true Winnie the Pooh horror movie. Until then, we'll just have to settle for 2018's Christopher Robin. Ahil Dayani, The Exorcist 2023. I didn't even know this was coming out. The Exorcist has always occupied a terrifying place in my heart. Growing up, my father formed a haunting mythology surrounding the film, weaving together tales about theater owners in his native Pakistan holding competitions to see if lone cinemagoers could tolerate it. It was the stuff of legends, and its aura was just as magnetic stateside when it debuted. I think being here stateside and seeing this movie for the first time, or parts of it anyway, way after it came out. I mean, I was like warned against this from my parents, relatives, other adults in my life. So, you have to see it to believe it was the common sentiment. I agree. The dormant franchise is returning this year now, thanks to Blumhouse Productions and Halloween 2018 creatives David Gordon Green and Danny McBride. A direct sequel to arguably the most revered horror film of all time, the 2023 film will bring back Chris McNeil, whose daughter Reagan was possessed in the first film. Despite an intriguing lead in Hamilton and Glass Onion star Leslie Odom Jr., it seems inappropriate to expect much from the sequel. Will feature an aged McNeil helping a young parent deal with their child's possession. The story writes itself, but predictability doesn't breed disappointment. I'm particularly concerned about how McBride and Green, who have strong roots in comedy, will tackle the franchise's strong religious themes with nuance. I think the same concerns were had about those guys with the Halloween movies. I haven't seen them yet, but I don't think it was another Eastbound and Down or Land of the Lost. Blumhouse has already put the cart before the horse, with the studio confirming that the film will be the first in a trilogy with eyes on the future. Today, everything a trilogy. I'm worried that the present will be nothing but setup, provide audiences with a compelling narrative and fulfilling thrills first. If they adore it, they'll come for sequels. Will those be any good, though? After the middling response to Halloween sequels, I'm concerned The Exorcist will descend into lunacy when credits roll. You have to see it to be disappointed, will be the common sentiment this time. Kim Bell, Scream 6. Apparently, Scream 6 team never learned, as the rest of us did in Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, or a ferry to it, that no setting, not even the Big Apple itself, can perform narrative necromancy. Scream 2022 gave us a lot of things, a little closure, some up-and-coming talent, a few solid one-liners and practical effects, but there's a lot it didn't give us, too, like a horror movie, a reason to watch past Act 1, or fresh commentary, where its abundant acclaim speaks to what it actually does. That is, immunize itself by lumping legitimate critique in with toxic fandom rants, mock or eye roll the things it knows it can't do well, and ironically reject the very nostalgia on which it relies. It's at least somewhat warranted, after all. Convincing so many people that a lengthy Twitter thread is, in fact, a movie is a pretty cool magic trick. But you know what they say, fool us once, franchise. I see you, Scream. In middle school, I too was a big fan of the old, hey, what's up? I'm wearing this Xena shirt as a joke, actually. So, like, sorry, you don't get it. The best defense, as any tween worth her rock collection will tell you, is a good, proactive distro fence or off traction. Take your pick. And that's exactly what Scream is, an hour and 54 minutes of beating criticism to the punch, all in the distracting guise of quote unquote saying something. Unfortunately, it's a oh God, there's one more. Unfortunately, it's a technique with diminishing returns. There's just no way Regina George is going to believe your entire wardrobe is a clever commentary. Eventually, she might even suspect that none of it is. The original Scream sequels failed because Scream already did the thing by being the first one to do it. The idea that a sixth installment might somehow succeed where all others have failed is as naive as going to the basement fridge alone while a mass killer is on the loose. I promise you, that same great taste, less filling beer will not be worth it. All right, last one. Oh, God. Oh, God. Okay, here we go. Tom Maysford, Craven the Hunter. I'm going to skip this because it's a Sony Spider-Man offshoot. So we know it's going to suck. I can't imagine it's going to disappoint because who would be excited for it? Russell Murray, The Last of Us. So we're not just talking about movies here. We're talking about everything. So this is going to be what, the HBO show? If you ask me what video games would be impossible to adapt into a satisfying television show, my second answer would be Quantic Dreams, sci-fi, socio-political drama, Detroit, Become Human. It may strike some as an odd answer, after all. It has an emotional, character-driven narrative, a world lush with possibility and hidden lore, and would lend itself quite seamlessly to Hollywood's best actors and directors. Still, the most vital aspect of the game would remain untranslatable: participation. How do you adapt such a player-driven narrative by taking away their agency? How do you improve a work of art by forcing its audience to be more passive consumers? My first answer to this prompt would be The Last of Us. Don't mistake my apprehension for pessimism. To call the trailers for the upcoming HBO adaptation faithful would be a disservice to how well these brief sizzle reels so effectively evoke the atmosphere and aesthetic drama of the original game. My worry is not that Craig Mazin will fall short in his attempts to depict the story. Chernobyl was nothing short of a bleak masterpiece, but that just depicting it will feel empty to former players. It will be truly fascinating to see how Mazin and co-writer-creator Neil Druckmann face this problem. It seems impossible that Druckmann, at least, could be unaware of how important participation is to this story, having so brilliantly engineered it into the fabric of his game. In fact, the magic of The Last of Us ultimately winds up being the attachment players feel to choices they don't really make. In an interview with screenplay analyst Michael Tucker, Druckmann describes quite viscerally how the player learns the basic mechanics of gunplay by being prompted to euthanize an innocent man. In the tutorial, players have already agreed to something impossible. With each complicit sacrifice, it becomes hard to distinguish between the character's selfish desires and your own. Without feeling responsible for Joel's best decisions and culpable for his worst, capturing that magic will be incredibly difficult. Runner-up, Cocaine Bear. Blasphemy! How could Cocaine Bear disappoint anybody? It looks exactly like what it's described as. Nick Staniforth, The Little Mermaid. Dear Lord. I was talking about Brie Larson videos before. Just wait till we get closer to The Little Mermaid. Let it be said that even in the few notes I heard of Halle Bailey's incredible rendition of Part of Your World, enough hairs were raised to assure it being a pitch-perfect take, and anyone disagreeing that she can't be Ariel can chew on a blowfish. Let's call it how it is, though. We've been here before, haven't we? Not just another remake, but a Disney remake at that. The House of Mouse's track record of returning to the well may have yielded some financial hits, but even those were ultimately gaunt facsimiles traced from far superior films. How many more do we need? I'm sorry to say, The Little Mermaid doesn't exactly look like it's going to be swimming through uncharted waters. It's the latest in a series of gingercides. The trailer, for example, may have sounded great, but it still looked like every other preview we've had for Disney's revisited IPs. The clips of classic scenes, the slowed down version of a beloved song. It's a paint by numbers routine that Disney needs to break from, and it doesn't look like The Little Mermaid will be a game changer. Sure, the additional casting oomphs of Melissa McCarthy as Ursula or Flounder voiced by Jacob Tremblay are easy wins, but at the end of the day, it's another beloved entry in Disney's back catalog getting a live action polish no one asked for. They don't make them like that anymore, and chances are this will be a reminder they shouldn't make them like this either. Well, let me know what you think in the comments. What project in 2023 do you think is going to be most disappointing? Do you think, like me, it could be Indiana Jones? Or do you think it's something else off this list, or some other picture or show or video game entirely that we didn't discuss in this article? Thanks for watching. Be sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. If you enjoyed this content, please give the video a like and share it with your friends. It'll help our channel grow. We'll see you next time.